Path 1, which is extra funding, and the PAC application system will be spoken to by Caelan, and myself and Rachel will also add to it. So I'm going to hand you over now to the structure of the course to Rachel Farrell, the Director of the PME, who's on mute.
Thank you very much. It's great to have a great director. So hello everybody, and you're very welcome to this information session this evening, and it's great to see so many people interested in learning more about our PME program here in UCD. So the PME program is a 2-year full-time program, and it's at level 9, and we always remind students before the start that it is a full-time rigorous program. So it's just to be very mindful of that if you're signing up, that it is a full-time rigorous level 9 master's program. And over the duration of the 2 years, you will be doing 120 credits of made up of various different elements, which we're going to talk through some of those now. So this is the qualification you need if you want to teach in Ireland, and it will qualify you to teach up to 2 subjects throughout the post-primary curriculum at junior and senior cycle. Now, the subjects obviously depend on your undergraduate qualifications. So some students meet the Teaching Council criteria for 1 subject, and some students meet the Teaching Council criteria for 2 subjects. If you only meet the Teaching Council criteria for 1 subject, there are other credits you can do to, I suppose, ensure that you meet the criteria of the programme. So you'd either be coming out with 1 or 2 teaching subjects at the end of your PME program. So the next thing then is just a sample of some of the modules. So obviously pedagogy could be a new word to some people. So pedagogy is all about the methodology of teaching, learning and assessment. And portfolio then is, building up your artifacts of learning throughout the program. So there is a core module on pedagogy and portfolio that is facilitated in both trimester 1 and trimester 2 over the year. As actually we've made it into a 10-credit module this year, because we have merged it with another module that's 3rd on the list there, which is psychology for teaching and learning. So each year we review the program to make sure that we're in line with leading practice. And sometimes we might merge modules that make sense, because it also makes assessment a bit more realistic as well, that we're merging some of the assessments as well. So we have inclusive pedagogy and portfolio to include psychology as 1 10-credit module. We have philosophy of education, then there's students, school and society, curriculum and assessment, educating Ireland. So they're all what we call foundational studies. And they are all 5-credit modules, and they're done partly in trimester 1 of 1st year and partly in trimester 2. So things are spread over the year, and they're modularized so that your assignments are done partly in trimester 1 and partly in trimester 2, so that there's consideration given to your workload throughout the year. And also you will have special methodology lectures on a weekly basis, and this is where we have practicing teachers along with faculty staff who work together in doing some work with you around the actual teaching of your subjects. So while you're on placement in your school placement, you'll be supported back in the university with ideas around methodology and in actually teaching the subject, your subjects, how you go about teaching your subjects in placement. So you get support on placement and you get support in the university. And then your actual professional placement forms a very significant part of the program, where you are, it's up to you to find your school placement. And if you have challenges, we do support you, but if you do decide to sign up with the School of Education, Caelan sends you out a list of schools, and we give you advice on your cover letter and CV and, approaching schools, but that is up to you to find your school placement. So your school placement then is that you will be teaching 2 subjects, and you would be teaching for a minimum of 4.5 hours per week, and that's spread over both of your subjects. And if you can't get an equal amount of time in both subjects, you would have at least one lesson per week in your second subject. What we usually encourage students to do, and it was difficult obviously this year in a COVID-19 environment, is that in the first month of your placement, we encourage that you would observe teachers in the school, that you would have, you know, some observation of teachers even outside your own subject, and that you might then move into the team teaching space, and eventually then you'll be not handed over a task completely as a standalone, that you should be assigned what's called a cooperating teacher, and then you would take their class for X number of classes per week, but you always have the support of that cooperating teacher in the school. So on school placement then, the assessment of your school placement takes place over the year, over each of the 2 years, where you are assigned a tutor who will see you on your school placement, but they also meet you on a weekly basis in the university. So you build up a relationship in smaller groups with a tutor that is very much a pastoral care role and a professional development role, but also they have a role in assessing you in the school placement. And then you're also assigned what's called a supervisor, and they assess you in the school placement, and they are subject specialists. So you have a tutor and a supervisor assigned to you in year 1, and a different tutor and supervisor assigned to you in year 2. So over the duration of the 2 years of the program, you will have 4 different people assessing you on your school placement. So apart from your subjects, we also encourage you to take part in all aspects of school life, and obviously that depends on the school, whether we would hope that schools invite you to staff meetings, to subject department meetings. Some students go on school tours. Again, depends on the school, whether you will be allowed to either meet the parents of the students you're teaching on your own or with your cooperating teacher. But these are other things outside of teaching the actual subjects that would encourage you to get involved in all aspects of school life, and we encourage you to build up a wide repertoire of skills and experience in the school, and get involved in extracurricular, being mindful of the workload that you will be taking on. But it's also enjoyable to take on other elements of school life if you have the capacity to do so.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. I'll continue on with the school placement, but you can go and mind that dog that's barking in the background. Okay, so as Rachel mentioned, that it's your responsibility to find a school, but we'll provide support and assistance in this matter. So at the moment, we have about 250 students from UCD alone who, as of today, well, it's a bit late now, they're either still in their schools or they're just leaving their school, who every day, or most days, it would be every day, most days, are inside physically in their schools, are teaching lessons, and the first sort of hurdle for any PME student is finding their school. So again, one of the most common questions that our students would have is, well, how do we actually go about that? So we have a few rules. The first rule is that the school must be within 100 kilometers of UCD. Now there's a little bit of flexibility around there. But the 100 kilometers limit isn't a limit that's there for us. It's actually there to protect you. Because as Rachel said, the issue around the PME is that it's full-time, but it's also really tiring, particularly in first year. And that whilst students are in many cases teaching, for example, in the morning, they, in all probability, will have lectures in the afternoon. So it's just not physically possible to be doing round journeys of longer than 100 kilometers to and from college 2 or 3 days a week. Our biggest fear would be that somebody would end up being so exhausted they'd end up being in an accident. So just think in terms of a school that is within 100 kilometers of UCD. Don't lose your lives if you find out that the school you've chosen is 102. That's 2 kilometers away from UCD. That's a time then just to contact us. So if you're committed to doing the PME in UCD, well, the first thing you'll have to do is to think about what school you're going to target. If you're from Dublin, obviously your alma mater, the school that you went to yourself, will be your first port of call. If you're broadly within that 100-kilometre zone, the same thing. Think about your local school, because many schools have a policy of taking on past pupils. It's also the opportunity for you to actually use any contacts, any relationships. So if you know somebody who was a teacher in a school, if you've got a friend of the family or a relation who's teaching in the school in the broader Dublin area or outside, contact them. And really then it's time then to start thinking about actually compiling a CV. That's what schools like. Round about May or June, even a little bit later if you want to, ensure that it's clear, concise with your academic results, even if they're projected, and have a covering letter that addresses the principal formally by their name. So I said this before to students, make sure you address the principal by their name. And one principal contacted me to say, yes, they'd gotten Dear John Smith. When I say by their name, you use it formally, Dear Mr. Smith, and change the covering letter for each school. So in other words, if when you're sending your covering letter, say, Dear Mr. Smith, I would really like to work in St. Michael's in Ballsbridge, or I'd really like to work in Blackrock College, whatever the name of the school is that you're applying to. Obviously, you don't need to change your CV, but change your letter of application to suit the name of that school. And if you're going to a school for an interview, because you will be called for an interview, make sure that you look up that school on the web and find out, for example, that if it's a rugby school, if it's a school that is really into drama or really into music or has got a very good science program, so that you have got some knowledge of that individual school that's above and beyond the information that would be generic to any other school. Make sure that you proofread your CV before you send it. And finally, when you go to an interview in the school, go as if you're going for an interview for a job. Dress appropriately. As I said, do your research. And also finally, I'd say, if you're going to teach, say, for example, English and history, as a principal, the first question I'd be asking is, why do you want to teach English and history? So have an idea in your own mind about what are the things about teaching history that you really find attractive. Don't go in and say, oh, I love working with children. If you have experience of working with young people, for example, if you were in the Scouts or if you trained a local GAA team, make sure that those are the things that you're bringing with you to the table, because those are the things that will make a principal quite impressed. So have a little bit of a think before you go into any school in that context. Okay, I'm going to hand you over now to Shane. And Shane is going to talk to you a little bit about the program that he works on. And I think actually what I might do is I might actually stop the screen sharing so we can see the faces of the individuals, because there's no further information per se that I'm going to be using from this actual website. So I'll stop the sharing, and Shane, you can start your chat.
Good evening, everybody, and you're very welcome to a virtual UCD. I realise that most of you are undergraduate students or some indeed postgraduate students in UCD, and so we hope you're all doing very well during this trimester. So as Declan said, I run an alternative programme to the PME. Unfortunately, it's not open to you as you're currently undergraduate students. So I run an undergraduate route to teacher education for those interested in becoming a science or maths teacher. That being said, I work very closely with the PME team, that's the program that you would be applying for, with regards to science and maths teacher education. So Rachel mentioned a moment ago that as part of your PME, you would work with expert pedagogues. That's people who understand what you need to do to teach physics or to teach biology or to teach applied mathematics, recognizing that there are specifics to those subjects that you would want to consider so that you could be an effective teacher in a secondary school. So if you do come to UCD to do a PME, what I would say to you is that the breadth of subjects that's available to you in UCD to specialise in is unparalleled in Ireland. There's no other university or provider that offers you the opportunity to mix subjects in the way that UCD does. Rachel and Declan and myself indeed, and Kaylin, we work with a selection of teachers and academics who come in and work with our student teachers to really hone their skills on what it takes to teach their specialist subject. So for instance, when I'm teaching people how to be a science teacher, we do that in a lab in UCD, recognizing that science is an experimental subject. Similarly, our language groups will work very closely with experts and specialists in that area. Our business people are right up and connected with what's happening in the classroom in business at these times. Rachel, for instance, has been instrumental in establishing the Irish Young Economist of the Year Awards. So the people that you're working with in UCD are really connected to the ongoing day-to-day activities of teaching in a secondary school setting. Coupled with that, then, we do research on education. So I would think very deeply when I'm not teaching people like yourselves about the nature of science education. How can we create a learning environment where the most number of people can engage with things like physics or with science or indeed with mathematics? So we publish papers on these things. And so we're exposing you to practicalities and ideas, and we put them together in your methodology lectures. I think another very important thing to say about the UCD teacher experience is that you don't do block placements, and that's a deliberate choice on our part. We wished for you to have the kind of combined experience of being a student teacher in school and a student teacher in college, so that the things that me or Declan or Rachel are going to talk to you about in lectures can be practiced or imagined or tried out when you go into school. And similarly, you're able to make real the things that happen in school when you start talking about them then in a lecture setting. So it isn't rather a sort of a distinct, discrete, let's spend 8 weeks just learning about sociology and philosophy and then ignore all of that when I go out and do a block placement, and that's where it's really happening. We understand that to become a teacher, which, let's face it, is perhaps one of the most challenging professions to accomplish. It's a very challenging thing to become a teacher. We recognize that this takes multiple skills. It takes skills of communication on your part. It takes content knowledge. You need to know your subject. We're not going to be teaching you physics or chemistry if you come to us to learn how to be a chemistry or physics teacher. We're going to teach you a lot of other things. So you need to bring all of these disparate skills together and mind one another, and then mind the pupils that you'll be teaching over the period of 2 years. So there's a questions and answers button at the bottom. If any of you have specific questions about subjects or about what it's like to be a scientist or a French person on a PME, by all means you can use that function, and I'll engage with you during the rest of today's webinar. Thanks so much, okay. Declan and Rachel.
Thanks, Shane. I just had a quick look there at one of the questions. One of the questions was asking about teaching abroad with the PME. In other words, if you qualify with the PME, can you teach abroad? And I can tell you that we currently have graduates from the PME teaching all over the world. I can't give you a blanket answer in terms of what country accepts and what country doesn't accept, because, for example, within the States, each almost county will have different requirements. But I do know, as I said, that we have a lot of teachers teaching abroad, and actually many of them still stay in touch with us. It's an internationally recognized qualification.
May I add there that I was about to write back to that student just to say, whilst we will work with you to become a teacher, we don't register you as teachers. So there is a professional body called the Teaching Council, and they are responsible for registering you as a teacher. And in order to meet their criteria, you must have a degree in your subject, and separately, you must have a PME. The only alternative to that is if you combine those things in a concurrent degree. So by coming to UCD to do a PME, you are not by default a teacher. You must apply successfully to the Teaching Council and demonstrate to them that you meet the criteria to be a teacher. And that is your license to travel abroad. So if you're a registered teacher in Ireland, it can be a license to move to another country and teach. But as Declan said, that's very dependent on the local arrangements that would pertain in that country.
Can I say what's kind of the essence of the PME is that if you have a group of, say, the 150 in first year, obviously some of them are maths teachers, some of them are science teachers, some of them are French teachers or English or whatever else. Obviously that to become a science teacher, you will require different skills, some different skills than the skills you would require to become an English teacher. But you will also require some of the same skills. So when Rachel was talking earlier on about, for example, pedagogy, in those lectures, we do lectures that teach you the general skills of becoming a teacher. And for those lectures, everybody is together. So the whole PME class is together for pedagogy, for Educating Ireland, for sociology, for student schools and society. They're all in the same lectures. And then they split up into groups for their individual subjects. So you would have two methodologies if you've got two subjects. So you'd have your history methodology and your English methodology, for example. And in those, then you learn the skills to teach those specific subjects. Because if you're teaching a language, or Shane was talking earlier on about maybe using labs in science, that wouldn't be relevant to an English teacher. So we have a sort of a merged situation. And the unique thing about the UCD PME is that at all times then, you're not waiting to go on placement afterwards. You can use those skills in all probability the following day because you're teaching while you're going into lectures in the afternoons or in the evenings. In first year, you're in UCD all day Thursday and other afternoons, which are available to the schools on all day Tuesdays, for example. So that you're also available to the schools on the mornings. So that means that you're teaching and learning at the same time. In your final year, in your second year of the PME, the very last trimester, so from Christmas until the end of the academic year, you're in school for the whole time. And that's to give you a real opportunity before you finish your PME to really embed yourself within school culture. And you're also at the same time writing up your final year dissertation. So it's a mixture. You don't have to come to lectures at all in the final half of your PME, or the final half of second year. And we find that the mix of having academics like us, who bring a broad range of skills. I was a teacher, Rachel was, we bring a lot of teaching experience with us ourselves. And also your methodology people who are still, in many cases, still teaching in the classroom. And then you've got, when you're out in schools, the people who are going out and sitting at the back of the classroom, watching you teach and assessing your teaching. And more importantly, giving you advice on how to be better are people who are bringing a huge range of experiences with them. So when I or Rachel, when we go out into a school, we go out individually and we'll sit at the back of the room and we'll watch you. If you come on the PME next year, we'll be watching some of you teach. We're not just watching it to say, oh my God, they've just made a mistake, they've done this wrong, it's not like that at all. It's the opposite. Our job is to point out ways that you can become better. So it's a very supportive environment in that way. Okay, so what I'm going to do sorry, two people. Rachel.
Sorry. Yeah, just a question come in there. I think it's just maybe to clarify something that Shane said, that with regards to the registration of the Teaching Council, so the PME programme is accredited by the Teaching Council, the actual qualification at the end, when you are finished your 2-year PME programme, the Teaching Council come in on a day to begin your registration process. So that it's not that you do the PME programme and then you're left on your own to register as a teacher. But there is the process where you have to get your qualification. So that this program is a qualification that leads to your Teaching Council registration. So we're with you as part of that process, but it's the Teaching Council who actually give you the Teaching Council registration number at the end. So it's a bureaucratic process at the end, but it's not something you're left to do on your own. So that's all explained when so once you are, and again, Caitlin's going to explain about the PAC system, but so when you are accepted onto the programme, it's the first step, in fact, that you have met some of the criteria in the first instance for the Teaching Council with regard to your degree and the relevance to teach a particular subject. So, so again, it's not something that you're left on your own to do at the end. It's something that you do with us, and we work with Teaching Council for it to happen. Okay.
Declan, there are a lot of questions from participants asking about what happens if I don't have all of the modules required for my subject. If anyone doesn't know what I'm talking about, I've just pasted in the chat there the link to the Teaching Council, and it says if you want to register as a teacher in French or in Irish or in history, then you must meet these criteria, and it outlines them, and you should be able to compare that to your academic transcript. It is not uncommon for a student to need 5 or 10 credits to make up, for a second subject. If you do want to make up those extra credits, that's something that you organize yourself. Anecdotally, I would say there's never a problem in UCD with this. What would be what we would not advise is that you try to take an extra 40 or 60 credits to just add in an extra subject. That's not feasible on top of a PME because the PME is very, very busy. So what you can do is take 5 or 10 credits, and how you do that is you have to look at your own transcript, compare it to what the Teaching Council need, and then look to see what the difference is and go and contact the relevant school in UCD. So it wouldn't be uncommon for a student who wants to register as a science teacher to need 5 credits in, say, physics. And they will ask the School of Physics, can I register in addition to the PME for 5 credits in your school? And they normally are able to make a local arrangement for you. But that's up to you to sort that out. And we can advise, but we won't know that you're short the 5 credits. That is up to you.
I'd like to just add there, Shane, as well. If students are taking extra credits, which again is completely acceptable, it is fee bearing. So any extra credits that you would be taking outside of the PME would incur extra fees. So if you had questions about that, I'm happy to point you in the right direction to make sure that you know exactly what they would be. And again, the relevant school would help you with that, and all of their contact information is on our website. But again, you can contact me. I'm sorry to introduce myself, I suppose, the PME admin. And I can point you in that direction again. But as Shane was saying, it would be up to yourselves to determine what you're missing.
And as following on from what Kayla said.
Sorry, can I just come in there again? Yeah.
Sorry, go on, Rachel, go on.
Yeah, just a question has come into the chat that's kind of linked to that. So just to be very clear that anybody that's in the audience tonight may not have completed their undergrad yet. We're not talking about the modules you're completing as to, your completion of your undergrad. What we're saying is that when you complete your undergrad, and let's say you've done a degree in history and English, and you have met all of your full credits for your history, but you're short a couple for English. You can meet the criteria to come on the program at one subject. And if you're now on the program with your degree qualification, but you're 5 credits short for your second English, it's when you're on the program that you can then register as an occasional student with the School of English to make up those 5 credits. And now looking at where you are in your current undergrad qualification, making up credits to the end of the year. We're talking about when you had your undergrad completed, assuming that your undergrad will be completed with the modules that you are completing for your undergrad. That's what you look at. You're looking at your completed undergrad, what modules you have in your undergrad, as compared to what the Teaching Council criteria are for those subjects. That's what we mean. So there's a slight difference between people who are qualified. Some people maybe in the audience tonight is undergrads, but we do have some people who are coming back to teaching, having been out of education for a number of years, that completed their undergrad numerous years ago. So that's a different category altogether. So just be mindful of that. We're confused around the criteria for the Teaching Council, you can get in touch with the Teaching Council. And if you want further advice, do drop Kayla an email at education@ucd.ie and we'll follow up if we can. But it really is between you and the Teaching Council around the subject criteria. But sometimes it can be a little bit confusing. And another question came in as well about maybe you want to address something. Yeah, so that's over to you to address the next question.
I don't know which, for the English Teaching Council requirements, the credits have to be divided into certain themes. And sorry, I'm reading a question. What would be the best way to figure out where some of those modules lie? The reality of the situation is that the only ones who can actually give you the definitive answer around that is the Teaching Council. So it's actually straightforward enough with English, but what my suggestion would be that you contact the Teaching Council. It's www.teachingcouncil.ie. and look at the subject specifications and look at the requirements in terms of their module, the thematic divisions in the modules that they're advising. And if you're not sure, email the Teaching Council and keep a copy of that email, because they are the only ones that can advise on that. Yes, Shane.
Sorry, Declan, I didn't mean to cut you off. What is helpful there, and as somebody else asked about, a biology module, and I covered plant stuff in it. Is that good enough? What you do is you make a case based on the module descriptor from UCD. So you go into SysWeb and you literally copy all of the module descriptors and you make a case then to demonstrate that you have the sufficient number of modules across the required themes from the Teaching Council. Now, it is not uncommon for the Teaching Council to say, go back to the university and ask them to qualify the answer. It's not that we want you to be the piggy in the middle here. It's just that they are ultimately the ones that will either grant or not grant you registration based on your modules. So it is better to get the, as Declan said, the email from them and save it so that you have it. Now, I'm making it sound like we have
staying on programs and then I suppose progressing towards particular careers or progressing towards further studies within the university system. And Fiona's going to talk for a few minutes maybe about some of the supports that are available to PME students.
Great, thanks very much, Declan, and apologies everybody, I'm having video problems. Caelan, I have a couple of slides. So I just want to tell you about the opportunities, two financial support opportunities that there are for students who are considering doing their PME. So the first of all is the Student Assistance Fund, and some of you may have already come across this at undergraduate level. And it is a fund, it's funded by the Government of Ireland, and it is part of their national policy to improve or to increase the number of students, particularly maybe from diverse backgrounds, that are going into the teaching profession. So there is a dedicated fund, it's ring fenced for students doing the PME or the undergraduate teaching programme. And it's there to help you with the costs, the direct costs of studying and also of your placement. It is a means tested fund, so your income needs to be below 49,840, and you can apply for this particular fund directly from our website, which I'll give you at the end. The second financial support is in the form of a scholarship, and it is the Curham na Féine scholarships. So again, some of you may have come across these at undergraduate. We have a big programme at undergrad, and we have a growing programme at postgrad. The graduate scholarship supports you for a fee waiver, so it is a fee waiver, and priority is given to students that have been supported by an access programme either here in UCD or in another institution at undergrad, and the applications for those will open in the springtime. So details of both those scholarships are available from our website, which is www.ucd.ie/ALL. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Fiona. And sorry for we should really have had you on first so you can go and have your tea. But I suppose it's just important that all of you as our students, potential students, know that we work very closely with the likes of UCD Access, that it's all about supporting you in as many ways as we can. Another unique element in terms of support that we have is that we have a dedicated member of staff, Ro, who would be sort of a bit of a hero for all of our students. And Ro Aiken is a former English teacher herself, and she's also a qualified counsellor. And Ro works very much as a sort of like as a pastoral member of staff, looking after or suppose supporting our students in as many ways as she can when problems arise that may impact upon their ability to continue on the program, or just might affect their self-confidence. And one of the key roles that Ro undertakes for us on the PME is that she runs this program called the STSP, which is the student support. Gosh almighty, STSP, Rachel.
Yeah, Students Teacher Support Program. Supplementary Teacher Support Program. Supplementary Teacher Support Program.
I hope all of the students are looking at this saying,
it's a support program, a support program.
This is what happens when you get old. STSP is a program that we run in first year and second year, and it's for students who are experiencing any kind of a difficulty or a challenge on their placement. Now, that challenge could be that they're having issues around classroom management, that they're finding it very hard to control a class. Or it could be something as not minor, but something as something you mightn't think of, like, for example, that they're finding it very hard to project their voices, or they're finding it very hard to plan their lessons exactly, or that there's something going on in the school and that they just need some advice. And Ro runs that STSP program for us. And you can be, at times, I might suggest to you, if you're a student of mine, I think you might benefit from going to Ro, and she'll do some extra work with you on your lesson planning, or she'll do some extra work with you on your classroom management. Or you can decide yourself, you can say, well, do you know what? That lesson or those particular group of second years are really, really difficult. How, you know, or it could be that those group of second years are really, really clever, and I'm finding it hard to have enough work for them. And Ro is able to draw upon her years of experience to give you that extra help. Because I suppose, as I said, everything on the PME and everything is about being a teacher is about having good relationships. And we're very conscious that, and it's an issue every year, that students often struggle around finances. And some students are lucky enough to get SUSI grants. And if you get the SUSI grant, that's great support. It isn't enough, but it does give you enough support, and it takes that little bit of pressure off you that you don't have to finance the whole PME on your own. But we also recognize that there's a whole cohort of students every year who fall just outside that threshold, who, because perhaps both parents are working, or because maybe they've worked themselves, they've got money in the bank, or that for whatever reason, they apply for the SUSI grant. They may have gotten it in their undergrad, they apply for their postgrad, and for whatever reason, somebody's salary has gone up, they're not eligible. And they go from hero to zero very, very quickly. And that can be devastating. And that's something that Rachel and I and Shane would experience every year with some of our students. Shane and I work on another research project. Shane was talking about research as well. And we're working on a project called PATH, P-A-T-H, and that's funded by the HEA, which is the Higher Education Authority. That's enough letters for today. But as part of that PATH, the School of Education provides funding for 5 first-year students. Now, you only apply for it once you're in first year. You can't apply for it before you get into first year. But the result of that is that, having applied for it, Shane and I and some other colleagues go through an adjudication system, and we can give 5 students €3,000 off their second year fees. And because there was such a demand this year, there was a very significant demand this year, the School of Education increased the numbers getting bursaries to 9, and the extra 4 people have, rather than getting 3,000, they're getting 1,500 off their fees for second year. So you don't get cash into your hand. It's off the cost of your fees going into second year. and that's funded by the School of Education via this PATH project. But we're very, very conscious that there are financial issues and there are financial challenges. And with that in mind, if there are any of you who would like to talk to Shane and I privately or in a small group, can you email Caelan, and Caelan will pass on those emails to us. And we'll organise another a Zoom meeting, either individually or in groups, for anybody who's experiencing financial difficulties or for anybody who's just a little bit concerned. Sometimes we've had this every year. Students have said to us, having gotten into first year, saying, oh geez, I don't know if I'm the right fit. I don't know if I'm good enough. There's nobody from my school ever did a PME. There's nobody, none of my friends became teachers. There's no teachers in my family. I'm the first in my family to go to college. How am I going to become a teacher? And what we would be saying to you is that if that has crossed your mind, if you've ever wondered, will I fit in? Am I good enough? The answer is yes. That's the first thing. But if you want to talk to us, to Shane and I, about how we can support you and to make you more comfortable, to give you all the information that you could need, and if necessary, link you up with current students who themselves may have found it difficult at the beginning for financial reasons. Maybe you found it difficult because you don't know anybody who has ever become a teacher. Maybe you're finding it difficult because nobody from where you live has ever become a teacher. And that it's like, oh my God, am I going to fit in? You will fit in. We do want you on the course. And we will do everything we can to support you. And we really, really encourage any of you who would like to talk to Shane and I about any of those worries or concerns, just to send an email to Caelan at education@ucd.ie, and Caelan will forward it on straight to Shane and I, and we'll chat to you then. Obviously, any such conversations are completely confidential. They won't be discussed with anybody else. Caelan obviously will be passing them on, and we'll treat everything with complete confidentiality as well. So don't hesitate if you need support, or if you're wobbling a little bit around it, contact us and we'll arrange another conversation with you via PATH. Okay, I'm just looking at the time and it's 17:51. Are there any other questions, guys? I'm talking to Rachel and Shane here, or Caelan, that you'd like to address? Shane.
I know that you've heard a lot of information from us in the last hour in terms of the logistics of applying to the PME program, and thanks to Fiona and Declan, the various supports that are available to students to come onto the program. But I think it's very important for us to say that becoming a teacher is a wonderful profession. I probably should have opened with this. Becoming a teacher is great. You know, there are very few jobs that will give you that level of satisfaction of having seen what you do impact upon people so deeply. And each of us that have taught for many years will share stories of how students who have now long graduated and are out into the world doing various things will come up to you and talk to you on the street, say, you taught me physics 10 years ago, or Declan was an infant teacher many years ago, and he'd say people who we wouldn't recognize because they're grown up would say, Mr. Fahy, you were my infant teacher back in 1953. And I'm joking.
That's the scientist being funny. So, we're all laughing on the inside.
But what I would say we'd all agree on is that the sense of job satisfaction in teaching can be enormous. It's a very rewarding job. It is a challenging job. It is a hard job. Unfortunately, it isn't a sufficiently paid job, but it is a good job. And I would hope that many of you who are here this evening are here because you've had experiences during your undergraduate that allowed you to work with other people, and that you found joy in teaching people, albeit in an informal setting or perhaps through sport or drama or music. If you enjoy that, if that is what makes you excited about being a French student or a physics student, then the PME is certainly a good option for you. It isn't the end, indeed, of your career if you do it and teach for a few years and decide to do something else. It can only add to your career because of the broad skills that you'll acquire through it. So I would really encourage you to think about your motivations for becoming a teacher and to think deeply about that, and not to be dissuaded by some of the negative arguments that can be made in the media about being a teacher, but instead to imagine what it might be like for you to be a teacher. And if you can imagine yourself doing it and imagine yourself being happy at it, I think it would be a good career option for now.
That's great. Thank you, Shane. We'll go over to Kayla now in a moment. I'm conscious of wanting to finish by 6 o'clock. Can I just add to that, that I was a teacher for over 20 years. And I look back on that time as being some of the happiest times of my life. We don't want to get ridiculous and happy clappy here and saying, you know, that every day as a teacher is fantastic, because of course it isn't. At the end of the day, it's a job. But going back to what I was trying to sort of stress was the idea of relationships, that the relationships you built up both with colleagues, with parents, but most of all with your pupils, they're life-changing. They're life-changing for you. Obviously, they're life-changing for the pupils because, you know, as Rachel will attest, that, you know, having a student coming back saying that you gave me a love of whatever it may be, or that, you know, you were kind to me, that I was going through something in my life, and that you as a teacher, you were thoughtful, or you were kind, or you kept an eye out for me. Those are things that can never be, you know, recompensed in terms of finances. Teaching is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful job. Don't go into it because you think of, you know, that long holidays are fantastic. Because it's actually, to be a good teacher and to get most out of it, you have to put an awful lot in. And for the vast majority of teachers, you do that because you love the job and because you're interested in the students that you teach. You have to think like that. You have to think about the students as being future people, and think of them as people that you want to be successful for their own sake, not for yours. Okay, so before we finish up, we want to have a brief look at the PAC application process, because there were a few issues that came up with this before. So Caelan, do you want to just talk through that, and Shane and I will jump in?
Sure. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So when you want to become a second level teacher, you go on to this, the www.pac.ie, and PAC just stands for Postgraduate Application Centre. It's the postgraduate part of the CAO.
Yep, so all PME applications are coming through this platform, PAC for short, Postgraduate Application Center, as Declan said. So when you're on the home page, what you want to do to get to UCD is through the institutions button here on the upper right hand side down to Professional Masters of Education NUI. So UCD is part of the NUI group with Galway, Cork, and Maynooth. So when you're applying here, but you can differentiate between which universities you'd like to apply for through this single page here for all of the NUIs. So you have to register and you log into your application system. Now I know someone had asked what the requirements are for the undergraduate degree, in your undergraduate degree to be eligible, and it's a 2-2 in your undergraduate degree is the minimum requirement. Now, some of you may be in your final year, so we understand that you don't have your final year transcripts when you're applying to the PME, but that's okay. So all of the, anyone who's applying as a final year student, if you're offered a place in the PME, it will be based on your previous year's education. So if you're in year 3, it would be based on years 1 and 2. If you're a 4-year program, it would be based on years 1, 2, 3, or 2 and 3, the most recent 2 years. And again, if you're offered a place as a final year student, it's provisional. So you have to upload your final transcript as soon as you have it midsummer in order to be offered the full offer of a place in the PME. So the PME is based on a scoring system. So it's similar to what you would have gone through the CAO system. There's no interviews required. There's no reference letters required for the application. It's simply your transcripts and any other relevant professional experience or other qualifications that you have that you believe would add to your application. The PAC website has a lot of good information. I would suggest perusing this when you have a chance. They go through all of the points for your professional experience, all the points for your academic experience, your undergraduate and primary degree performance as well. And then it also lists the points from last year, 2020. They also have an FAQ section at the top here that goes through a lot of really useful questions. So again, I would suggest going through this. And if you have any further questions, you can contact PAC or ourselves, and we can try and walk you through it as best we can. PAC probably would be the best place to go since they administer the applications. So if you had a question, does my professional experience meet criteria for points, you should email PAC. They'll help you with that. If you have a question about the subject declaration form, PAC would be able to help you with that. So that's the PAC website.
Thanks, Kaylin.
Okay, sorry.
I think that the problem that arises for most students is actually the panic when they get onto the homepage and then go onto the institutions, because it's not clear. This is actually an issue we've had with PAC over many years, that students panic because they don't see or they can't see UCD on it. So it's just to remember, it's the Professional Master of Education, NUI, the National University of Ireland, because that covers ourselves, Cork, Galway and Maynooth. So once you click on that, then you'll see it'll bring you to the right space. So just to remember all of that. Okay.
And I'd just like to say, sorry, just quickly, the applications are open now and they close January 31st currently. All documents should be uploaded by February 21st. So your application should be made by the 31st if you're looking to apply, and any supporting documentation should be uploaded by February 21st.
And Kaylin and I and Rachel would know very well too, because we deal a lot with PAC, that the staff in the PAC office are very efficient and very supportive and incredibly helpful. So yeah, it would be, if you have queries around PAC, ring them directly, because as I said, our own interaction with them over the years would have been very, very positive. Yes, Rachel.
Yeah, just there's a load of questions. In case we didn't get to answer all the questions, you know, we'll just, if your question wasn't answered, you just email Kaylin and we'll follow up, because a lot of questions come in. It's a very interactive session. There's a lot of questions come in. And the other thing is just, we didn't really allude to this in the presentation, but there's one thing that's unique about the UCD PME program, that we try to give as much value added to students. So we have quite an extensive range of extracurricular that is not on our core, and they're not credit bearing. So, you know, we're not going to oversell and underdeliver. So they're not listed on the presentation, but just to let you know that we do each year, we partner up with, you know, industry partners and other education partners to offer extracurricular in a wide variety of areas that are of interest to schools. So you can build up your you know, your CV and your, you know, a unique selling point when you're going in for those coveted jobs when you're qualified. And if you want to see a little bit more about that, this presentation tonight is being recorded. That question has come in. We're recording the session. It will be up on the website. So we'll send you the information where that is. But we'd also advise you that we actually produced a nice video for induction this year for our new PMEs. And so it might be helpful for you to look at that induction video as well, because that goes through what it's like when you're starting. So think of yourself, you know, in 6 months' time, if you were starting, that would be your induction. So just a number of points that came up tonight are actually covered in that video as well. So all that information will be sent out to you with the links to this recording and to other information that came up there tonight. Okay.
And just to follow on from what Rachel says before we finish up, that those extracurricular activities focus on a wide variety of things, partnering up with the likes of Microsoft and GA leadership. It's actually amazing. Rachel is the one that actually runs and organizes all of that, and they're fantastic. And most of all, they're free. So Rachel organizes and makes sure that all of these extra added value elements within the PME really make a difference to your employment prospects when you finish up on the PME, that you're more likely to get a job. Guys, what I'd like to say to you all is thank you very much for coming on board. Thank you very much for paying attention and listening and sending in the questions. We'd love, I was going to say, to see you. We'd love to meet you in person. It's been a very strange year for all of us. We would love to see you in person in UCD next year. We've got a wonderful cohort, both in first year and second year this year. They have proved to be fantastic and great ambassadors for UCD. And so what I'd say is that, you know, good luck with the rest of your studies in UCD. Remember the dates that Caelan just mentioned in terms of applying through PAC and uploading your documentation. And we'd really love to see you in one of the lecture theatres, probably in Newman, next September, probably no, the end of August. We have our induction days, and we see you all coming in with big shiny faces on you, all excited and terrified at the prospect of teaching.
With shiny heads, that's okay.
Shiny heads. There's nothing wrong with the shiny head. It's very important to stress that we're all in our best behaviour in front of you tonight, because you don't know us well enough. Yeah, come and see us, and hopefully we'll see you all in August of next year. And the best of luck, whatever happens in the final year of your studies. So thank you, Caelan. Thank you, Fiona. Thank you, Rachel. And thank you, Shane. I'm going to finish up the webinar, and hopefully see you all in 2021. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks. Bye. Before we stop, I'm going to stop.